Hi, my friends. Thanks for coming back. I'm so excited that you're here because we're going to talk about your options on how to, what option works best to print your book in hard copy. So, we kind of talked about this a little bit in a previous video. If you want your book printed and not just electronic form, your options for what we call print on demand vary widely. They vary greatly. But I want to bring up kind of the big picture here so you understand what you might be looking at, what might be the better option for you for what you want your hard copy book to do in the world. Okay? So, to boil it down to brass tacks, you essentially have two options. You have an option to use a print on demand service, and you have an option to do like a bulk print order. For a lot of the print on demand services, printers, if you will also allow you to bulk order books. What that means is that you, the author, are going to say, hey, I want to print 100 copies of my book. You get it printed at cost. You don't pay any distributor fees or anything like that. But they send you the 100 books. So you have boxes and boxes of your books. What does that mean? You're responsible for selling those babies and shipping them out. So you may save money on the front end, but then you are taking responsibility into your own hands as far as shipping and selling and all of that. Now, maybe if this was something you knew you were going to be able to promote at an event and you wanted to be able to hand people a book at an event, that sounds like a wonderful option, right? You have 20, 50 books sitting at an event. I was at a reading once. I guess it wasn't necessarily a reading. It was an event with a local author, for me, local in Minnesota. He had written a series of crime novels, and they were really good. And he had like a bundle of his books sitting there. And of course, I snapped them up and I read them in like 2 weeks over Christmas vacation, holiday break. So, that was easy for me. I gave him my money and took my books home, and he didn't have to ship anything to me. And he was there talking. It was actually at a critical thinking event of all things, so it wasn't even a book event, but he was asked to be a speaker. So if this is in the cards for you, if you are hoping to find some speaking events to maybe further your bigger mission that your book fits within, this bulk printing option may be a good fit for your goals. It may not fit for everyone. Let's say you are just going like, hey, I want to write my book. I want a hard copy, but I want people to be able to go to like Amazon or wherever and click buy, and then it gets printed and it gets sent to that person. And I don't do anything but sit back and wait for the checks to roll in, wait for the dollar bills. That is essentially how a print on demand system works. So let's go ahead and shift gears into that. You essentially choose your format of book. Do you want hardcover, soft cover, and all of that? We've talked about sizes of your books and color, interior and all of that. So you choose how it's going to look. You figure that out. You get it formatted. So you have the files that are going to be ready to print. Then what you do is you list your book on those book selling sites. So you can do this a couple different ways, and we'll get more into it, but you can work through a print on demand distributor. Something like KDP through Amazon is what we call it, print on demand distributor, Ingram Spark, Blurb, that type of thing. You can do this individually. We're going to talk more about that. But once your book is listed, it's out into the world, right? I could go Google your name and Google the word book or the title of your book, and I would find a listing for it for me to purchase. And if you're familiar with Amazon / addicted like I am to buying books on Amazon, you usually have a couple different options. You can select ebook or hard copy or gently used or whatever it is. So when you upload your book onto that site, you're uploading the applicable files that says, I'm going to have this for sale as ebook. I'm going to have this for sale as a hard copy book. And when I, the buyer, select hard copy, what happens is the order is sent to the printer prints the book, and the distributor takes care of shipping it out, right? It may go through a retailer, like a bookstore or some other type of retailer that then forwards it to the reader. But either way, what happens is the reader goes and buys it from the site. It gets printed for that reader, and then it gets sent out to that reader through one or more channels. So really, it can be a very fast, easy process. These printers and distributors are all set up for this. Even if I am the reader and I buy 20 copies to give to my friends, I can do that. And then at the end of the day, I'm paying the retailer, and the retailer then turns around and sends it to you. So I pay, me, the customer, I pay for the book. I never really know where all that money goes, but behind the scenes, someone is doing the distributing, someone's doing the printing, and someone wrote the darn thing, right? So you are in the mix of who gets paid. But of course, there's costs and fees. Now, let's talk about distribution fees. Printers like Ingram Sparks and other kind of big ones have relationships with the big names like Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So when you list your book on their sites, you are able to just sit back and not do a lot of marketing, because people will go to these sites and get your book, right? They meaning the distributors, are saying, hey, you can use our sites and have this privilege of accessing our network of millions and millions and millions of visitors who potentially will stumble upon your book and purchase it. And all you have to do is pay our distribution fees. So, that's something you'll hear, maybe this term like wholesale discount or some other distribution fee markup. It's essentially, you say my book is worth a certain number, you choose the price. We'll kind of talk about that in a separate video, but then they may add a little bit more to it for that markup. Or it's deducted, like if you say my book is $19.99, the wholesale discount is deducted from that amount, and then, costs and all of that, and then what's left at the end of the day is yours. So there's a bunch of math that goes into it. But when you think about distribution fees, I want you to think about what kind of doors it opens for you. That's what you're paying. You're paying to open doors to readers that are going to come to that site to look for potentially your book directly, or just a book maybe in that genre, and they're going to find you in a search, right? If you do not work through a distributor, there needs to be some other channel to reach your reader, right? So we talked about that bulk option, but what are some other channels? Your website, your marketing efforts personally. Maybe you have just a shop set up, on a website, and you're talking about your book in other places and telling people you can go buy it here. There is going to be a lot of work to do on your end that replaces the fee that you would pay the distributor and the printer and all of that, right? So not only are you going to have to manage the books and manage the process of selling it and shipping it, but you have to promote it. Either way, you're going to promote your book, of course, but Amazon, let's just use as an example, has such a wide reach that it's fairly easy to get your book found on that site if that's what these people are going to be looking for. It's going to be easier to find a book like yours on Amazon than it is to do a Google search and then find your website, right? So the organic searches, if I go to Google and type in your name and your book title, even if you have it for sale on your website, I'm going to probably find it first on Amazon. And there might be a conflict with selling it in both places. We'll talk about that as well. So if you want to get your book, we kind of talked about selling it online, but if you want to get your book on bookshelves nationwide without pounding the pavement and just hitting up your local shops, which we talked about in a different video, how do you facilitate relationships with local bookstores? You need to work with a distributor. And book distributors are essentially companies that pitch and sell your book directly to bookstores, libraries, wholesalers, other retailers like Targets, right? The distributors are pitching and selling your book for you. That's what goes into that fee. They're promoting it for you. Now, you are still going to do some promotion. You're still going to talk about where people can go buy your book, but the distributors are the ones with the channels to these bookstores, these retailers, these physical locations where your hard copy books are going to be sold. So the distributor is going to do that for you. And it really depends on whether you're using one of those POD services, the print on demand services, or you're printing in bulk, because we'll talk about this in a minute with regard to wholesaler and how things are taken care of at the warehouse and all that. We'll talk about that. But think about how this can open some doors for you. And then make sure you do your research when you're looking into one of these distributors, which, by the way, we'll talk about. I want to bring up some of the bigger names, and we're going to spend more time in my next video talking about this. So come back. But in exchange for them doing all of this pavement pounding for you, in exchange for them knocking on doors and saying, hey, you should stock this book on your shelf, they may ask for an exclusivity agreement saying you cannot use another distributor to get your book out there, to sell your book to retailers. They are able to charge you a percentage of the book cover price in order to do the distribution for you. There's going to be things in the agreement that you're going to want to pay attention. How much of your book cover, your price, your book's price, are you going to give them? What percentage is that going to be? Do they allow you to still sell your book on your own site? That type of thing, okay? So you need to look into the agreement that you're signing when you get into a relationship with a distributor that may be trying to get your book on bookshelves, right? And then also consider that distributors, just like a lot of people in the book world, they tend to specialize in a specific genre. Maybe it's, as simple as fiction and nonfiction, or children's books and whatever. Just make sure that you are understanding if this distributor is a good fit for memoir. And maybe they just are a very general distributor, and that's totally fine. But what you don't want is your book, sitting with a distributor with an exclusivity agreement that can't get your book in bookstores, right? They don't have good connections for that. So I would assume they would also do some checking to see if they're a good fit, but just keep that in mind. There are some distributors that are a bit more indie friendly. If you're self-publishing, you're an independent author, they're going to be a bit more friendly than if you go to other distributors that are looking for maybe a different caliber of book. So just keep that in mind with regard to your self-publishing status, if you will, or what we call single title authors. If you only have one book, or you're not working on a series, or you have no other books in the works, some distributors may not want to work with you if there's only an option to have one of your books. So let's shift gears a little bit again, because I want you to understand what all these terms mean and what exists out there that can be a good fit for you and your book. So you're going to hear terms like book distributor or book wholesalers, and I want you to understand what those terms mean in comparison to each other. A book wholesaler is different than a distributor, because a book wholesaler will not be hustling your book around. It will not be marketing or pitching your book to bookstores. It will instead hang on to all your printed books in the warehouse, and then when retailers come directly to them, they will fulfill the requests. They will fulfill those orders. So it's like backwards. Like the bookstore has to go hit up the wholesaler. Send me 25 of these books. Send me, 30 of these books. The bookstore, the retailer, is coming directly to the wholesaler. Instead of the distributor goes the other way. The distributor goes to the bookstore and says, hey, I got this amazing book. You need it on your shelf. Can I hit you up for 20 copies? Right? So it's the opposite. It's the flip. So you just have to decide. And by the way, with the wholesaler, of course, there's going to be a different fee structure. Maybe it's going to be much cheaper to manage your printed books because they're not doing any marketing and pitching and just, knocking on doors, right? Makes sense that they're doing less work, so they're going to have less of a fee. So you just need to figure out what's the best fit for you. Are you going to just bulk it and manage it yourself? Are you going to work through a wholesaler because you don't necessarily want to stress about the extra fees? Or are you going to maybe look for the distributor that has maybe more of a wider network to get you in more shelves? And this is really like nationwide or maybe even internationally. If you're only looking at trying to get your book in on the shelves in a local kind of scenario, just keep it local in your area. You may not need either option. You may not need a wholesaler. You may not need a distributor. But the bulk option might be your best bet, because you're just going to go around and say, hey, I'm a local author. You have a local book section. Can I sign you up for 10 copies? Whatever. So that is the bigger picture of the players in the book print game. Okay. When you're a self-publishing author, these are good things to know. But at the end of the day, if you put your book up on Amazon and you are allowing your readers to go click and buy and Amazon sends it off, that is what we call print on demand, and it cuts you out, but you're going to pay for it. That's usually the most common scenario for a first time or only one-time book writer that you may fall into that category. So think about that. If you have more books under your belt and you're going to want to see more money in your pocket as far as an ROI on your efforts in book writing, in the book writing world, these players may have a different meaning to you. So that is our lesson for today, my dears. And again, I kind of peeped at what we're going to talk about in future videos. So just keep coming back. We're going to keep the goods rolling and continue educating you on the wonderful world of self-publishing. Okay? Talk to you soon.